What up? This is Jeff with Final Boss. We are doing a edit, which has been a little while. Unfortunately, I only have one in the queue tonight, so if somebody sends me their story while I'm editing this, I'll edit it. Otherwise, I might play some games. Call it a night. All right, let's take a look. This is the Gifts of War prologue, approximately unknown words. Brushed strands of Mani's hair fled her face as she stood beneath the leaves of the great tree, looking up. Okay, so I'll always zoom in pretty deep on an opening line because opening line carries a lot of weight. Um, so there's so much specific. So I like that there's specific detail here, but there's so much that it's hard to gather. Sometimes simplicity wins. I feel like this is great using detail, but it's a little overcomplicated. Actually, I was gonna message the writer of this and say editing now. Bloop, there we go. Okay. So, for example, like cutting that out will simplify. Umami's hair fled her face. Fled is a little vague. So maybe that's where you can bring in that concrete detail. Remember the subject verb is really, really the key. Like, so the more that can really be tight and really solid, the better. Uh, and where your detail really resides there, and because the brush strands of is an extra prepositional phrase on top of Umani's hair. So it takes the subject and it kind of spreads it out and dilutes it a little bit, which is something you don't necessarily want early on when we're just getting our bearings. Um, Fled her face, and is it the wind? And because that's like not really the actor. Like the hair isn't the actor of this sentence. It could be gravity or the wind pushing her hair out of her face. Those are just food for thought. Because yeah, if the if it really is gravity pulling the hair out of her face, it's gonna feel a little bit passive. Umami's hair fled her face. Like, is it actually fleeing? So if it is the wind, or if it's the wind pulling the hair out of her face, that actually will be a more evocative image because that's a more familiar image because we are used to the wind being the actor on, our hair or whatever. The great tree, as she stood at the great tree looking up, the sun had begun to beat down. Um, Again, ways to clean up those verbs is never a bad thing. So the sun beat down on the Triniacian girl's face as her curious mind wandered far from where she was then. I think that's kind of implied, as her curious mind wandered. So that's another great example of sometimes those extra details will dilute the impact of your sentence. Far from where she was then. It's also a little bit of verbal doubling because wandering implies going a distance, leaving where we are. And then, far maybe is an okay detail, but where she was then. Wandering implies leaving, where you're at. So this, I will almost say, this is an example of verbal doubling. You already have a word in the sentence with the implication of, leaving where one was. So the second mention isn't as necessary. Awesome. She had wondered. She wondered. Sometimes the more you usually don't need had gone, had wondered for the most part. Novelith, how's it going? Good to see you. Good news, Novelith. This is the only story in the queue right now. So if you submit something, I might have a chance to edit it tonight. If you're feeling brave. She wondered what her father had been up to. She hadn't seen him in 3 moons. I usually want to write this out. lying down on the wooden deck. Yeah, I'll just put a little note there. In prose, write out numbers unless there's a specific reason to do otherwise, i.e. a name or something. Lying down on the wooden deck of her family's front porch, Umani had felt. See, we got this. Had felt. So, yeah, we can just say felt. She had found it ironic. She wondered. Yeah, I don't know why we're in the past perfect. Because where she's just thinking, she's not having thought. She found it ironic they would use barks of lesser trees to build their homes in greater ones. Her mind continued to drift farther until she smelled something. Also, porch is a bit like, this kind of is a word that is implying my, my perceptions of a porch, though I think this isn't a tree house. So I kind of get it, but that word I feel like carries a few connotations. This word without qualifiers brings in my modern understanding. Okay, her mind continued to drift. So sometimes, if she hasn't, so this is like me being kind of, I'm saving up my 3,000 points for a priority edit. Cybersword, what? What up, Cybersword? Welcome, welcome. Sorry to surprise you. I knew someone has the red pen out tonight. What up, guys? Yo, what? Welcome, welcome. Great job so far, Cybersword. Really enjoying it. I'm just starting, so you timed it perfectly. Also, to all those other brave souls out there, Cybersword's story is the only one in my queue right now, and I usually can do 2 edits in a given evening. So if one of you is feeling very brave, send over your stories. Yes, I'm so glad I decided to jump on that. Well, perfect timing. I thought I emailed. I usually try to email. Maybe I went to the wrong address, but then that's absolutely perfect timing. Her mind continued to drift farther, so we already know she hasn't really left the state of a drifting mind. These are all interior thoughts she's having as she's thinking. So this gives you the opportunity to make your verb sharper. Remember, any extra words continued to, anything with a to, any infinitives will dilute it. Had gone also will dilute the impact versus just went. Will dilute the impact of your verb. Excuse me. I'm drinking a ginger ale, so of course I'm probably gonna be burping a lot. But so then you just say her mind drifted farther until she smelled something particular. Oh yeah. I would set this moment off a little bit, and I know these are nitpicky notes so far, and I'll try to go a little faster so I can give you some more high level stuff. But the grammar, the structure, the way sentences flow, especially early in your story, they are really, really critical. So her mind drifted further. Yeah. I don't know if we even need that then. You just do suddenly. She sells something peculiar. So again, we have had begun to. She looked around. So let's just get right into the past tense. No, I need prose help. Yeah, the past perfects are because I'm paranoid about tense. Honestly, the only time you would use past perfect is if you are set in the past tense and it's retro. Oh, isn't it amazing? Oh, sorry, I'm talking too loud. Sorry. It's so good. You can put it on the TV in the room. You can cast it, I think. But yeah, the only time you will use past perfect is if you are in the past tense and then you are referring to something in the past. And then even then, a more modern technique is to signal. So let's say you're doing a flashback. So I'm writing a novel in a past tense or a short story in the past tense, and then I suddenly I need to have a flashback. I still don't recommend flashbacks too much, but you do need them sometimes. Um, so you flash back, and in more modern writing, the only the transition to the flashback will be in past perfect, right? So then, you know, he thought back to his days at his mother's house, and then it'll cut, and it'll do a new paragraph, and it'll say, she had always been cruel to him. Days went by, and then immediately it'll go to past, and then it'll go back, and then it'll transition back to kind of like the present past. So, she went through his stuff, and she never let him go to class, and she hated him so much. Those days had been, and then you'll go back to past, the worst in his life. Now, Joe was happy to be out on his own, and you can still go right under the past. So a lot of times those transitions will be a little more blurred in past tense. And then some writers, honestly, it's very, very common. This feels like it's a young adult novel because the protagonist feels young. So what's very common in young adult novels, Cybersword, is just to use present tense. And if past tense is a little more complex, it has a few gotchas. But present tense is especially if you're not jumping around a lot, present tense is a really powerful tool. I wouldn't um I wouldn't not do it. Maybe one thing I would recommend is do a test chapter. Rewrite this chapter or these 5 pages you've sent me in the present tense and just see how it feels. And you might be surprised that once you kind of are thinking about it in the present, once it's like a play by play, it's a little easier to conceptualize how those verbs will play out. I would recommend present tense. It's a really great tool, and it's becoming in vogue a lot more from what I've understood. And I mean, I could be wrong, but for a lot more YA type stuff, it's much more common. Okay. She looked around for the source of smell. So this is a great example. So this is what you call kind of guiding the camera a little too much. So she looked around for the source of smell. When she looked down, she saw through. But you don't need to have that transition, right? What you can imply so much more than you may think, right? So then like this, when she looked down and saw through the planks of wood, this could be, I'll just write it in the comments so you can not. So like, smoke rose. So remember, changing the subject, making sure it's action. Smoke rose from between the planks, of wood at her feet. Flickers of red light shifted beneath the boards. No, it couldn't be. Not a fire. So yeah, again, her facial expression had turned sour. She needed to figure out what was going on. So again, those are things that you are telling, right? So like the facial expression turned sour, that's showing, but she needed to figure out what was going on. So this is another technique that can be really helpful. So like this, Umani needed to figure out what was going on. That's a great use of telling, right? Telling has benefits. It helps compress, so it's a very compressed thing, but showing gives you a little more legwork, and if it doesn't take too much expansion, you might be able to get more. It may be more evocative for the reader. So in this, for example, you could have a question. Oh no, what's going on? And just report her thoughts. And that will imply, right? Like you're going to imply that the fact that she's asking that mental question means that she is going to go seek an answer. And so you're communicating more with less, right? Like, because what this sentence is telling me, it's just telling me her goal, but it doesn't tell me her emotions. And one of the blessings of interiority, and one of the reasons it's so heavily used right now, is when you jump into a mental question, oh no, what's going on? That tells me not just that she's eventually going to have that goal, but also that emotion that's coming with it, that, oh, she's afraid that there's something wrong going on in her home and she wants to go address it now. What up, Men at Work? Welcome, welcome. Also, I'm telling this to everybody on stream. This is the only thing in my queue right now. So, and I usually can, generally, if it's not too late, do 2 edits in a given night. So if someone sends finalbossediting at Gmail, 10 pages of their story, maybe less, 5-10 pages of their story, you might be up next, so you can have a live edit. So be ready for that, guys and gals. These opportunities don't come very regularly for writers. So the girl climbed to her feet and began walking towards home. Towards her home. That's fine. The smell continued. I don't know why we're referring to as the girl here, because we could just have she leapt. Maybe we can give a little bit more. So again, like climbed. So again, we want to use remember that subject verb core of your sentence. And this is something, right, this is probably a first draft or an early draft. So, like, this is something you'll see in my early drafts too. But part of going back in later drafts is to find those subject verb bases and see how you can tighten them and heighten them, right? Find a better verb that communicates some of the emotion too. This sci-fi fantasy, and the tones and stories are meant for adults, not necessarily. It just requires a bigger mental toll. Got you. Okay, so not YA. Yeah. I mean mental. What's the way that people phrase it? Adult themes, but not adult content. But more like adult content or adult themes, which I think is important. I really value that in a lot of writing, where you can have something that's challenging and has themes of loss and pain and kind of the more advanced stuff you see, but also without having to have a bunch of gratuitous stuff, which I know a lot of people like that, but I don't personally enjoy it so much. So that's I think that's a very valuable aspiration and an audience where there is demand. The smell continued to burn her nostrils until she reached the inside of her home, where the air was clean. Across the threshold of her house, a massive vibration shook everything around her. Throwing her backwards. Yeah, I think you're going to want a comma there. Google is even suggesting it for me. So, her backwards through the door and onto the floor. The girl looked to her left and saw an entire home being ripped from the tree and falling to the forest thousands of feet, some 3,000 feet below. I always, just 3,000 feet below. Some of those extra, like I do this a lot. It's a tick in my writing, so I am a little bit more like Johnny on the spot when I try to catch it. Umani, come inside quickly, she heard her mother's voice call. So again, we know this is this is a perfect example of dialogue tags, right? She heard her mother's voice call. So I think one of the pitfalls that many writers fall into is when you're in a close third person, and this is something that everybody works on. I still work, but when you're in a close third person, you think that you have to report everything from the point of view character's point of view. Everything reported has to have been able to be perceived by the point of view character, but you don't have to write it that way. So you could do like this. Her mother, from their bedroom. Whatever. Her mother shouted from inside. Yeah. So again, this is verbal doubling, right? So we have Umami did what she was told, which is telling us she followed the walk inside command, and then we describe running inside right after it. So remember, and then So this is great, right? This means you can save room in your writing and make it more efficient of a read. So whenever you run into the verbal doubling, whenever you have the same thing expressed twice, like so essentially it's just saying she's going inside, she's listening to what her mother said. Whenever you have the same thing twice, pick the most evocative. So I'm just going to do that from my point of view here, which is Umami sprinted. I don't want a better thing than Umami sprinted inside and closed and slammed the door behind her. I don't think you need self. Mama was. Yeah, but I don't like it. But I don't like it. Thought you would like that. It's a great little channel that guy. I mean, because he does a lot of like cool research on interesting stuff. I introduced the Foxy Lady to one of my favorite YouTube channels, which was How to Drink, which I really liked a lot. All right, Imani, do you remember those shuttle drills? What's going on? She asked as noticed. So again, this is another example to show and not scared. So on all of her segments on the table looks scared and confused. So again, how did she see them when it's dark? But maybe there's some like all the lamps had been, someone had shut off all the lamps. Only, dim streams of light coming through the roof slats illuminated the scared faces of her brother and sisters. So obviously this is like written in a few seconds, so it might not be the right what you're going for, but the themes that I'm trying to get across by like kind of this suggestion here is, one is we're describing the room. Only dim streams of light, coming through the roof slats, or there's probably a better verb there too. So like you want to like focus on these kind of narrow details rather than say she noticed the lack of light in the room, because that's really vague. What does a lack of light mean? Does that mean the lights are off? Does that mean everything's pitch black? Does that mean some shadows have become animate and like smothered all the light sources? Obviously the last is more fantastic, but but this is a fantasy story, right? There is going to be more plausible things in a fantasy story, so you really have to clarify, and you can use that to your advantage. Like when I say the room is darker, this is what I mean. There's still enough light coming through the wood slats to see, and really just evoke that scene and spend a moment, right? Because we just walked into her home, but we don't really get much. Does she try to grab a teddy bear? What is her home like? A home, the way a character dresses, all those things can say so much about a character without you having to say, oh, she always wore the traditional dress, or la 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 la. Or maybe she's rebellious. Like, her family was all in the traditional reds and blues of the tribe, but her little brother wore the black of the opposing tribe, and he, on a day like this, how could he possibly do that? Those are ways to start just giving us world building by contrasting some of these things. So I'm going to put a bigger note. I think I'll just do it here. I want to see, take a moment to describe the inside of the house and how the characters look and dress. Use contrast. have your hero describe the, different things, the beds, weren't made, cups were turned over, etc. It's a bad example, but for the detail of a new setting, kind of. Yeah, and I think this is funny because like even in screenwriting where you are going when I did screenwriting a while ago, um whenever you changed into a new scene that we had not been to before, even though you are so, in a screenplay you are viciously sparing on description. You don't describe things. You try to just have action dialogue, but you still, every time you get into a new scene, every time you're establishing a place, like give us that establishing shot, right? Think, you're the novelist and you need to treat your prose like it's a camera. So when you bust into the room, you want to say, establishing shot. Okay, this is a small, you know, the cramped house, like, her whole family was huddled in her cramped house, everybody back from work. Dad still wore work clothes with dirt smeared on them and tree branches, whatever. And that gives us, okay, this is working class family. This is, whenever you get into a new scene, you got to give us an establishing shot. Whenever you intro a new character, you got to give us a little bit, not much, especially if they're a minor character, you don't need much, but give us a little bit of like, hey, he wore the workman's clothes, big pit stains under his arm. I know that's a different person than someone, dressed in white robes with, arms full of books and like a reliquary in his hand. And that's the thing is by giving us some of those details, it will take some of the pressure off you to have to describe everything. Or have to like say, oh, this is like the cleric of the family. He's, religious, those types of things. Mwah, I have arrived. Welcome, B1ndas. Mommy, do you remember those shuttle drills you had during class? Your mother asked. She nodded, wondering why the lights were off and the world was shaking. I think she kind of knows there's a fire, right? Um, I mean, there's a fire at the base of the tree. I feel like that would be. This thought feels a little. I don't know. I don't know if I believe that she would be that confused, or maybe she's like young, or yeah, I don't know. This is why you had those drills, dear, in case the great tree is dying. Okay. So this is a good example. So usually when the mother's dialogue finishes, and you're jumping into her interiority. So the mother gulped in case the great tree is dying. So, and we actually have a writing tip video about this. That wouldn't cause a tree to shake. They've had fires before a tree never shook. Ah, got you. So that's great context to have. She nodded. Why the lights are off? Why the world was shaking. That had fires before. Bad ones. But the tree always remained. The tree never shook. The tree never broke. Silly example, but that is a way that, and this is why, these kind of live edits are good, is so when people are asking questions, you can say, oh, no, let me just put this clarification in there, and just, because so much of writing is just smoothing out the speed bumps. Oh yes, interiority. So first off, you have this as the same paragraph, but when interiority, what people are thinking, the reported thought, like you're doing here with these questions, because this is what's happening in her mind. Is that what's happening? Were they going to die? This is all happening to Umani in her mind. So whenever you're jumping into the brain, or jumping into thought, it's you don't want you treat it like dialogue. So if her mom was talking, you space it out, you put it in another line. What's more is it usually helps if we kind of cue that these are going to be Umani's thoughts, especially because we're in third person, with just a little lead in. So like, is that what's happening? Are they going to die? Okay, so then So then that just shows me, okay, this is Umani. We're transitioning back. Like, so this was the original. This is why you had those drills deer in case Mother Gulped, in case the great tree is dying. Is that what was happening? Were they going to die? So that is not as clear, who is the person thinking, but this is kind of the rewrite. This is why you had those drills deer in case the mother gulped, in case the great tree is dying. Umani stared at her terrified family, her breath coming in short gasps. Sorry, my headphones like to turn off if there's not music playing. Were they all going to die? These questions flooding her mind, satiated by her. Yeah, satiated. I mean, she's not really answering the questions. I would make this a little more tactile, and usually the action is right next to the dialogue of the person who did it. So it'd be like her mother's hand gripped her arm, pulling her out of her thoughts. Maybe you must go, child. Whatever. Just make sure that having some verbal tics that make me know it's the mother. I mean, I think I have a sneaky feeling the mother's probably not going to make it. But even then, maybe the mother always calls her child or whatever. Those little grace notes. I mean, this is an early draft, so those don't really matter so much at this phase, but those can be really helpful down the road. Oops. All right. Is my thing on still? Is this thing being dumb? Alright. I hear you. Nice. Okay, cool. Awesome. Also, to those new, we hear you. Excellent. Okay. Mother, you can't fit that. Children's mother opened a hatch underneath. See, mother's not going to make it. Mother, you can't fit there. It's because these are not for adults. That is because, again, whenever, let me see how to best explain this. These characters are in a really tense situation, right? Their home, it's not just burning, but its foundations are crumbling. So you're looking to clip the dialogue a little bit. And this is a little, this is something that maybe is not for early drafts, not something to worry about so much at this phase. But these are not for adults. And that is because these are not for adults. So in a tense situation, you're going to use a lot more contractions, you're going to clip words, dialogue is going to be a lot more chunky and kind of thrown at you. This is a tense situation. I'd expect more clipped dialogue and contractions and, broken speech. Umani is still yet confused. Still confused. I think that's what you want. Comma, still confused. Comma, watched her siblings, scramble inside. I think it's SCHU, shoot, like that. Yeah, I think that's right. Am I right? They aren't speaking English. That's true, but even if it's translated, it's written in English, so even in their native tongue, your goal. So let's say, okay, yes, this is a culture that's not written in English, but your goal as a writer is to be an amazing translator. right? And an amazing translator, whatever language they're speaking in a tense situation, there's a really high likelihood. Um, that's helpful, but that's a really great explanation. But a great example of this is the book um, Clockwork Orange. That has a little bit more graphic content, so maybe just read the first chapter. I think there's not too much there. Um, but an example of that is, they're speaking Russian, right? Like these are these Russian punks, and he is using some jargon from them. Um, but everything else is made to sound like this slang. He's making the English translation sound like the Russian slang. Yeah, first chapter is pretty clean. Okay, yeah. Um, but that's a really great example because you have to literally read that book for a while to kind of grok what's going on. You have to start learning. Oh, Malchik means like a bad kid, and like and like I forget, horror show means like a crazy time or a good time. Um, so yeah, that is a very understandable way of thinking about it, but I would encourage you to see yourself as a translator, and a translator's job is to make it feel as real as it is in the original language in English. So even if these characters speak in a foreign tongue, and maybe there would be a more a translator might transcribe it in a more florid way, in a more written out way, especially modern translation, will try to get the essence of it. Okay, they're freaked out, they're clipping words, they're clipping sentences, they're just trying to get out of this house as fast as they can. I mean, these people are talking in full, complete sentences when their children are like going down chutes down this tree. That's a pretty scary moment. So I would imagine there'd be a little bit more, like that tension. Come on, Uma, you need to go, her older brother told her. Her eyes were serious but glazed with moisture. I won't go until you do. Kindred was always the last. Um, I won't go until you do. So look, this is another great example. Oh my go. You're next. Go. Is this still Kindred speaking? I'm guessing that's in his eyes were serious with it. Yeah, yeah. Then you could do like you first. As Imani lifted her foot to take a step forward, the door behind her exploded. So we shifted into the present. So this should be exploded. Exploded, throwing her to the floor. I don't think we need face first. It's kind of implied that she's getting cast to the floor. She felt her head crack against the flooring of the house, and warm liquid that had begun to pool beneath her forehead. Yeah, so then again, this is another great example of the perspective trick, and this is the challenge I think with close third. She felt her head crack against the floor, right? That is structurally true, right? We're experiencing this through the viewpoint character. So she is reporting that, okay, I felt my head. But because this is close third, and especially how much close third person has evolved, you can take some liberties with this. So you can just jump to, her head. Oh, that's not letting me write. Okay, there. Her head cracked against the flooring. Again, and then the flooring of the house. Sometimes, you could either do houses flooring. It's a little shorter. Anything of the blah as a possessive is generally a little weaker. Not always. You will have times where you use it, but as a general rule of thumb, especially in a tense scene, anything of the blah 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 as a possessive is usually something you can change to just the houses, XYZ, houses floor. not always, right? Like there are definitely times. This is not a rule. It's more just like, hey, this is a common thing where it's a gray area that usually falls on the side of just making it have the possessive, apostrophe s. The worm lip had begun to pool beneath her forehead. Ow! She exclaimed. This feels a little. I don't know. This is your call, but like when I get slammed, I imagine she might just howl in pain rather than clearly say the word ow. Your call on that. But that's something where stylistically I would lean in a different direction, at least. Umani, hurry to the slide, he called. Please, dear, go now while you still can. Umami, the slide! The blade leaping in front of her. I think to stop something is implied, or maybe you can describe, a huge shadow, loomed outside the door. Oops, my huge shadow loomed outside the door, towering over. What's his name? Kender something. Gracious, what was his name? I forgot. Her older brother. Oh yeah, Kendrin. Okay. D-R-I-N, sorry. Okay. Please, dear, go now while you still can. So we've had that line a couple of times. We've had this go now, go now, go now moment. I feel like I want to see something happen, right? We've had a, get moving, get moving, umani moment a few times. Feels like we're playing the same beat over and over to, let the viewpoint character see what she needs to see. What about, why not have her, almost leave and go get something, my teddy bear, or, my magical relic. I need to grab that. Kind of a silly, kind of fantasy trope joke. Boss, move the screen. Oh, sorry. I can't see where you are. Oh, no. Sorry. I'm sorry. Oh, gosh. I sometimes, I have to usually, like, shrink this down. Hold on. Sorry, guys. Thank you for telling me. I'm terrible. Okay, that should be better. And I have it so it won't scroll out of range here. Here, I'll just show this note here. But essentially, like, you've the general idea is we've played the moment a couple of times now of, hey, you need to leave. Umami, you need to get going. Umani, you need to get going. Umani, there's literally people here. Get moving. So my thought would be you might it sounds like you need Umani to be there, right? Like she needs to see the horror or whatever is going to take her brother and her mom and her family. She needs to see this person. Yeah, this massive black thing. Unlike, yeah, okay. So she needs to see the abomination that's coming to get her family. So my recommendation will be, what's another beat that could delay her departure rather than just shock? Because her just sitting there shocked and everyone being like, go, get moving, come on, kid, is going to make that character feel a little weaker, right? What if her little brother stumbles, or she's like, oh, Billy's still outside, let me grab him, or if she's like, oh, I need my magical amulet, I won't be able to protect my other family members without it, runs into her room, gets her magical amulet, puts it on. I don't know. but that might at least hopefully get you started on the road of thinking, okay, what are some other ways that I could potentially execute this that it'll be a little bit more neutral in terms of, okay, excuse me, we're getting a new beat. There's some sort of evolution, you know. They tell her to get going. She's like, no, I have to grab this thing. She grabs it. She thinks she can fight. Maybe she tries to take a swing, and her brother's like, okay, just move, and he shoves her in the thing, and she has to fly away. I don't know what that's going to mean, but those are just some things to think about. She's supposed to be weak. She's only a child, barely not a toddler. Okay. Huh. I got the sense that she was a little older. I think I got the sense that she was older because she's thinking, when she's going into a lot of thought. I guess Mama is pretty young. Yeah, Umani needed to figure out what was going on. This feels, this type of thought ages up your character. Also, some character description could help anchor Umani as a child. And that kind of goes back to my earlier point, right? Is like I'm gonna default. Yeah, I had seen 10ish years old as well. Like I had seen like preteen, maybe like 12 or 13. Like kind of just leaving childhood was kind of the age, especially because she's thinking and communicating pretty articulately. And so again, that's another trick you can use with dialogue and thought, which is pretty much not a fighting age. I see. Okay, cool. Awesome. But that's another tool that maybe you can use to express what that character looks like is, first we probably do, you just have to have an establishing shot on that character because without it, you can see that we're kind of drawing different conclusions. So you have to really guide our imagination in those critical areas where you say, hey, we see Umani, she looks at her toes or something, and they're, whatever kids do, or she can see that, everybody's so much taller than her, or whatever. Or you just have that third person narrator zoom out a little bit and describe, say, Umani was, 8 years old, whatever. You know, like and then you can also use her thoughts and make her thoughts kind of sound like an 8-year-old, like, I don't want to go to school. What's big bro doing? What's big broy doing? Mama, like those types of things might be helpful. I don't know. I wrote young, I wrote like younger characters. I kind of, but the youngest I wrote was maybe around like 12 or 13 because it is hard to write like really really young characters because then that language isn't developed and it's really hard to have them be communicative or to like have them be a viewpoint character is really tough. Kids can be surprisingly thoughtful and articulate. That is very very true. Um, but their logic will be a little disconnected, right? And that's how you kind of signal it, right? Like, I'll talk to my nephew, but he'll be kind of like, his mind's everywhere because he's like a little kid. So he'll be saying these like really complex sentences, but about stuff that I hate. Yeah, I hate really knowing children characters. Yeah. But yeah, that's something to figure out because I think maybe the takeaway is that, hey, like Umani isn't fitting just yet. Like we don't have enough information to know Umani the way you want us to understand her. Because right now we're all drawing different conclusions, and whenever you have multiple beta readers coming away with something different, that means that there is a missing piece of description that will align everybody's imagination. You're trying to shrink the standard deviation of experiences that your readers have, right? You're trying to have everybody that reads your book imagine very much the same person, imagine very much the same scenario, and imagine very much the same emotions. Like that's very much the goal of revision, is to start narrowing down and saying, okay, maybe this was a little vague, so people could have come away with two different impressions here. So I'm going to try to center those around, like using concrete details to tighten that up. Mother, what is her inquiry could have a sudden success in fitting in the hole, letting it loose a small screech. She might begin to fall down the slide. Sleek metal giving her unguarded sleek metal burning. Oops! Oh my goodness! I skipped ahead. Sleek metal. So giving her unguarded elbows burn. So again, that's where we're losing. I'm gonna do less of these because I'm going to do less of these because I kind of have this note earlier, and I imagine you'll go through and do it yourself. But again, burning her unguarded elders rather than giving her unguarded elders burns. Making sure that the verb is not a transitory verb if you can help it. Like giving burns is less effective generally than burning. Just because, humans, when they read, are looking for that subject verb. Her mind began to race with questions, none of which could be answered right now. Again, that's a very advanced. It's a very advanced thing, This feels older again. This feels like a preteen thought process. After falling for what felt like 30 minutes, Umani landed in a massive pile of pillows, shaking her head. Would they have pillows? Straw. Pillows, seems very modern for a tree people. Would this be straw? Yeah, something along those lines. All right. I'm going to do a little bit less grammar now. 667, how's it going? Welcome, welcome. I wrote that for school right after I turned 8. Logic would be disconnected, especially in tense situations. Yeah, I agree with B1ndas on that. I had a hard time getting to sleep yesterday night. I don't know why, but I just had trouble sleeping. I think it took more than an hour. So, but that's a really great example, Novelith, right? Because an adult would analyze more. But it's just like these I statements. So that's saving your writing from when you're a kid is great fodder for if you're writing a young kid, right? Because most kids, they're thinking in I statements, and whenever you go to tutoring or something to help kids learn, it's like, I went to the park, I liked the park. It's like these very clipped impressions, right? And you can use that style to make us know that this is a younger child. Mama is mad. Why is Mama mad? Did I do something wrong? Mama's normally not this scared. Mama looks scared. I'm scared too. It's very very simple, kind of like these very chunked pieces of thoughts. That's a really great example, Nabla. Thanks for sharing. 667. They're technically advanced civilization. They just live in trees because traditions die hard. I got you. Interesting. Okay. But would it be like a pad? So then an advanced civilization. So would it be like the landing pad or whatever, or the landing mats? That might be another way of showing that it's different. Because pillows, it feels like a kid's tree house in some ways. Saturdays and public holidays are my favorite day because I get to stay home. I get happy when I stay home. So yeah, very chunked, usually I statements, and they're kind of these separate little thoughts of transitions that sometimes are recursive. So you're kind of going back to public holidays. When I stay home, I'm happy when I stay home. So these kind of recursive thought patterns also really common. That's great. It was when she realized her ears had stopped working. She saw the flashes and lights and explosions of gunfire, but didn't hear anything. She saw a clear path to where she thought might be a Trinican guard. So I like this. This is kind of, there were flashes. This is kind of that recursive structure. So this is actually really good. I still don't like that she saw, so, she saw is just describe what she saw. So flashes and lights, explosions of gunfire, flickered overhead. But the forest was silent. Stayed. A clear path, So I know I said I was going to stop doing grammar, but open in front of her. Huh? Oh. Let me know if you want me to come and say prayers real quick. Running through a battlefield, she saw things and people being eaten. She ran and ran, hoping to find safety in the arms of a guard. So this is feeling more. This is feeling more young. This POV is closer to a young POV. But grammar is fun. I know, and I am definitely a little OCD around grammar, but I want to make sure that I get to some of the structure questions. She looked around, trying to see where they were going. She saw a small transport vessel. Mommy saw her siblings getting on the transport and the doors closing. But why? Why were they taking off without her? Great. Closing would be period, but I guess doors closing. But why? Okay, this is another great. This is good POV here. Good young character. It's not as if you have to self-edit for 80,000 words. Yeah. Don't worry. I have to self-edit for 140,000 words because I can't write short novels, people. I don't know why. What's wrong with me? Sad. But I did finish my rough draft, so that's great. Very excited for that. She couldn't hear what's happening. She thought of herself, "Where's Mama? Where's Sister? What's going on?" So again, yeah, you can do italicized thought, but you're doing okay with interiority. Um, and these are getting a little repetitive. Um, uh, we already have, questions coming through free and direct discourse. Do we need reported thought here? And I also gotten a lot of sense that she's confused. Probably don't need too much more on that point. Okay. She brought herself back to the transport, began to take off. What? She thought, am I stuck here now? She saw her mouth wide open, her arms banging on the window in terror, horrified eyes locked on her. The man looked at the child and began to kneel down. Mama could see him mouthing something. She shook her head and pointed to her ear. The man's face. Interesting. I like this mental voice. This is a cool thing. This mental voice is pretty cool. I like that. Okay, coming in a sec. How long? Hey, long novels. Oh man, Brando's Stormlight Archive are some of my all-time favorite books. They are mine as well, but they definitely are more taxing. They are a marathon versus a sprint, I guess. Are the little kid examples helping anyone? I have 9 examples for a 9 or 10-year-old. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm going to be right back. Feel free to post those in, Novelith. I think those are great. I am going to say quick goodnight prayers with the Fox Lady, and I'll be right back for some more editing. Can you hear me now? Okay, this headphone's kind of crap. Never get something from Art Steel series. Yeah, don't buy Steel series. They're trash. 100. 667. I got the 500 package. I was looking at 250 because I had all the books. I think. Lots of yeah. Only 5 million over goal. Yep, 1 mil with like 8 minutes. It's crazy. I'm almost through Oathbringer. So if we finish it and like it, I'm excited about the series. I'll probably grab that 250 bundle. The ending of Oathbringer left a little bit desired in my opinion, but I'm still pre-ordered. Oh yeah, yeah. I liked the ending of Oathbringer, but that's just me. Words of Radiance was amazing though. Words of Radiance, one of the best books. One of the best books in the series. Words of Radiance was just solid. Super solid. Just such a great read. That makes me want to reread them now. Thanks a lot. Now I got years of reading ahead of me. I blast through them though. I go through those in like last time I reread Stormlight Archive, I did it in like 3 weeks. Cuz I'm obsessive about reading. Certain books, man. Like I just reread the Dresden Files because the new one's coming out. But I'll see what I can do. Yeah, seriously. I just read the new the last Dresden File. Like I just read the last book in the series because the new one's coming out on Thursday, and yeah, I read that in like 2 days. It's like really long too. So yeah. He removed his head. She now didn't understand me. Stay behind me, I promise. Child, you will outlive me. So are like the escape boats not really that good? I like this exchange a lot. I think, I actually am liking the pacing. I think this is really well done. I think the pacing in the family, like that family house situation, probably needs to be tweaked. But this pacing is nicer. So yeah, from the guard, she watches the guard began to walk. Yeah, what does this feel like? What does this feel like? Do tears start? What's the physiological? So yeah, if you can't describe what this feels like, try like the physiological reaction. What is the? There aren't boats. They were shuttles to a spacecraft. They were on the last one. Oh, that's right. But why did the guy on the spacecraft tell the girl that's on the planet? Why did the guy in the spacecraft tell the girl on the planet that she was going to outlive them? I have a lot of setting building to do. That's okay. This is a rough draft. I mean, so much of a rough draft. Oh, he didn't. Wait. He removed his head, and he nodded understanding as she began to try, the tears coming from a place of sheer terror. He's talking to. The man looked at the child and Mommy could see him mouthing something. She shook her head and pointed to her ear. The man's face turned to one of the understanding and placed his forehead under hers. So is this Umami? So wait, this should be Umani, right? Umani heard the voice in her mind? Is this Umani or Marith? So I hope so it is Umani. So the guy is then talking to Umani and he's saying, "Stay behind me and I promise you will outlive me." But he's on the spacecraft, isn't he? She brought herself back. Wait, okay, maybe I missed something. She didn't think twice before he just grabbed her. Okay, things, yeah. She finally made it to one. Cat, you're being obnoxious. He grabbed her gun in one hand. She looked around trying to see where they were going. She saw it, a small transport vessel. Saw her siblings getting out and the doors closing, but why? Oh, I see. Oh, so they're both stuck behind. Okay. Okay. I got confused. That was probably just for me leaving that. I don't think that was a problem there. She watched the guards begin to walk forward to face wherever these things were. Guard thrust his hand as the hilt of a blade materialized, repeating the motion the other arm. Okay, cool. We're going to get a cool battle here. Then bringing his snapping shockwave pushed out something. It didn't stop them, however. Don't need the however there. That's kind of implied. Guard took a defensive stance, prepared himself for the... So we kind of, again, this is all verbal doubling. So you want to really go through, and what's great is if you trim some of the verbal doubling. My cat's being a stinker right now. If you trim some of the verbal doubling, you will have more room for setting building, which is great. Two spears came from the side. He caught one, ducked underneath, thrust his sword at the opponent, killing it. One comes in the front. He manages to duck behind the one. Buckler. Okay, so we might want to break up this action. I'm not going to do it myself, but I'm just going to say, break up this action into paragraphs. A good model is cause, effect, new paragraph, cause, effect. That's like a helpful way, right? Oh, I'm missing something. The ending of OB left little desired, yeah. Oh, wow, I missed chat. Okay, I got really behind. They were in the last one. Okay, cool. Your trust co-editor wants credits too. I know. He didn't reread. Yes, no. Okay, cool. Your trusty co-editor wants credits too. All the credits are given. You all are wonderful, and if you all have thoughts on this piece, like please share them in chat. Like the goal of this is just to give the writer as much data as they can before they embark on their revisions, and that's the best thing, is just say, hey, cool. Like we all know, whenever you write a first draft, you're gonna have to revise it. So, hopefully, if you have some more stuff in mind, and it's just some more data about things you want to tweak in your story, the easier it'll be to make that revision really stand apart. Trying to rise again, the guard is stopped by 3 spears entering his chest. He is dead. Yeah, so again, this needs to be broken up. This could use a little bit more. Show me this. Don't tell me. Grass, as you heard his thoughts, run. She looked around, found the strange beast-like thing. I want a description. Like we've gotten a few little chunks of this, but now coming over this here. One of the advancing creatures. I don't think we ever really get, we managed to deck one of the buckler again. No, we don't really get much of a description. Before the fight with her defender, the kid should get a good look potentially this creature, and we could get description. One thing to also ask is, who is your narrator? Something you don't always have to do. This is more relevant in Omniscient, but in Close Third there is also a narrative voice. I think if you ever read Agatha Christie, you will see that she's very, very big into this. Like, we're in Poirot's shush cat. Yeah, we're in Poirot's like close third person, I believe, but Agatha Christie's voice, the narrator, is still coming in and kind of cracking jokes and saying things. So that's a really fun read if you're trying to sort out point of view. Okay, here we are. Also, this is the last call for you all. I'm not super tired yet, but my queue is empty. See Death in the Book Thief. Yes, that's a great one, and that's also in close third. Well, actually, it's more omniscient because he will go out and say like, "Oh, these things happen," but then he kind of settles in close third for the most part. Yeah. But that's a really great point. That's a really great point. The Book Thief, man, what a great book. That book's mind-bogglingly good. Which you could hear. She made to concentrate and tried to make something out of what her mouth was doing. She didn't recognize the language. She couldn't understand. Dear child, we are the Herarium. We now rule your planet. We do not take prisoners. Okay. So yeah, I think we should definitely get a good look. Cat, be nice. Come sit. Last one, I have a short story for you to read or edit. Yeah, send it on over. You have my email, right? Finalboss@gmail. If I don't get through all of it, I'll read some more of it later. If it's the shorter the better, because I'm kind of getting sleepy. But I usually only do about five pages or so on an edit. So I hope that's okay. Okay, we read your planet. So this needs, again, this big old paragraph needs to be broken up a little bit. This is another paragraph. Could get chunked up by broken up by action reaction. So that might help. Someone kill the hero, then kill the girl. The man he's attacked from all sides. Cutting down the field for the guard died standing, spitting in the face of his killers. So she dies. Okay. Alright, that's a dark ending. Alright. Okay, so let me just do a quick overall stuff. I think the good. I think I love the concept. Except, and the world is cool, like the mental, like, telepathy was awesome. The battles seemed pretty cool. Seemed awesome, like, cool. I liked that we had action and motion from the get-go. And this is another, so this is the things I would say improve. And you kind of know the general grammar stuff, so I'm not going to go into that. Honestly, though, like prologues are always risky, especially when the viewpoint dies. The reader feels like they've invested, and that time was, lost, because now we have to get to know someone new. It's a decision that you can make if you want to, but it's just you're gonna have to work extra hard. It's a prologue to a gray dark story. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. So I mean, a grimdark story that does this is Game of Thrones, right? You have this mean knight. He's kind of a jerk, and they're going off into the woods, past the wall to screw around with something, and they find this nightmare, right? Um, I would study that. Study that. He also has a ton of viewpoint characters, so it's a more advanced techniques. The first chapter of the actual book, you get whiplash. I like it. I like it. Yeah, she dies, but all right, I respect that. So more happens. Okay, cool. That's just my notes from where I'm at. Basically magic. Fair enough. Resurrects her or something. Okay, I respect that. Okay. Other stuff is scene description. Really and character description need to be at the forefront. POV intents are two things you really want to focus on. Consider doing the highlight method from my blog. I always recommend this because it's so important. If you've done this already, the highlighters. Whatever. I'll just share the post. But yes, a lot of what I see is just figuring out how to order a scene, and the highlighting method really helps you do that. So use this tool. I've used it. I always try to like do whatever whatever I'm pitching, I try to do it myself. And so yeah, use this tool. Just go through one chapter of a book you like and just absolutely highlight the whole thing. And yeah. Check your email. My short story is what I did for a contest a while ago. Just curious on your thoughts. Awesome. That's perfect. That'll be a perfect nightcap. Let me think. We have POV intents. And the POV I think had a few things. Like one is like a child's POV will sound different than an adult's, but remember, in third person, you still have a narrator. Who you can use or leave silent, personalitied, but who can step back and give contextual information to. So that's a tough one. Narrators, it's a very powerful tool. It's not uncommon in more recent writing. But it's one of those things. Did you send it? Oh, there it is. Short story. Excellent. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get it all set up in Firefox here. Because... Oof. This is a long short story, so I might not be able to finish the whole thing. I hope that's okay, B1ndas. But I will definitely read the first couple of sections. All right. Overall, great work, though. I loved the concepts and the idea of this, and I think a few drafts of fine-tuning and feedback will have this in a great place. Awesome, and I'll shoot that over to you once the stream is done. So there we go. No, I want this to be on Final Boss, please. There we go. All right. So first, because my eyes are weak. Oh, is it on suggesting? Damn. Okay, I guess. Oh, it'll be weird if I double space it. If I double space it, it gets mad at me. So I'll just do it like single space, but I might miss some stuff because it's so hard to read single space. Let's put my glasses on. A layer of grime covered the sown streets. Oh wait, whoa. Excellent. Thank you. It was like a 16K words limit. I got you. Appreciate. All right, let me just read over chat. The thing about this scene is I imagine it's set in a woodsy hangar bay inside the low levels of the great tree, still hundreds of feet above the forest floor, but much lower than home. I will need to work on describing that into the story. I think that's okay. I mean, you can even just go out and say that. Honestly, my best recommendation is for your next draft, you don't have to be super overt, but just err on the side of communication. Because I think you have really great concepts, you have a really great conceptual setup, you have conflict, you have action, there's stuff going on. In the more meta level, like, yeah, can I care about these characters more? They kind of just seem like pieces on a board right now. So trying to that context, letting me know who they are and what's going on, is going to make me care. So when they get killed, or when the family has this horrible thing, I actually kind of feel that loss with them right now, because it's still a little because I don't have those details, I can't connect as well. But I'm excited to read, so the gears turn. But yeah, feel free to keep shooting in questions, both people. Layer of grime covered the stone streets, so entrenched that one might surmise they hadn't been cleaned in generations. The grime of the cave. So this is so I'm getting that one might surmise. So that one might surmise. This is a very formal style of diction, a high register. So that's okay. But I'm going to expect that to be consistent. I'm going to expect that to be consistent from the narrator from now on. That's the challenge, is once you open up with really formal diction, you kind of have to stick with it. Yes, I will. Cybersword, don't worry. I will share that Google Doc once stream is over, so fear not. A layer of grime covered the stone streets. So again, if I'm being really nitpicky, and I will be on first sentences, I would just say grime caked. You know, covered is a little bit of a blended word. Kind caked, the cobblestone street. I don't know. So entrenched. Entrenched is kind of a weird word. I don't know. Like entrenched means almost like barriered. Is a word choice that I don't feel fits. So thick, the grime in the street was matched only by. So okay, so you're using a very pulled back narrator. So again, when it comes to the competition, oops, so boss will send that to you through email. Cybersword, yes indeed. Thank you very much. Let me just make sure that I am. I'm gonna get a little glass of water because I'm dried out. Because I'm running my old mouth, running my big dumb mouth. All right. The grime of the street was matched only by the filth covering each building, so dirty that upon first observation one might think that the walls were made of obsidian. Again, I'm like really snippy about verbs, so this is maybe more of a style choice, but like cast from obsidian, you know, the walls were caked obsidian. That's more of a style. This is style. That's more personal preference. Take it or leave it. But oh yeah, I was also saying a lot of the literary places right now, I have noticed, they are not as into high register of language stories. So there, a lot of times, this very formal diction is not as, and I'll write it in just so it's in the notes. Formal diction, high register of language is less in vogue currently than more informal, voiced speech. This is voiced, right? Informal, informal speech patterns. But you do get a narrative voice. This is a very formal narrator talking to me. Even the rain wouldn't dare evict the dirt from the street. Trash littered the alleyways and storefronts. Only cleared off on the chance that one thought something of value is hiding beneath the dark plastic. This trash littered the alleys and streets. And only, I think you need an and here. Only was cleared off on the off chance there never was. I like this. Good. It's nice little, we've had these long sentences. Nice to have a short sentence and paragraph to break up a long setup. Yeah, I was doing this for college short story context. It's not intended ever to be published. No, that's totally fine, totally fine. If you were to follow the type winding street, you would eventually come upon a bridge, under which a river lay resting in the night's chill. Not sure. This is getting a little purpley. Feels a little purple. Yeah. Feels a little kind of like overdrawn. Its inkly blackness was only punctuated by the scraps of trash flowing slowly through the center, or stuck to the slides, their fate to bob there forever. Again, this is kind of so like this really vivid description is great. Like you're using really great language, but again, without conflict, it's a you run the risk of it only serving itself. So like usually, you know, one thing to think about as a writer that might be a great exercise, and to see if it's something you want to try, is to see how early you can get a problem into the story, right? Like, and you are setting that up with this dirty, dirty, dirty city, and that's a problem. But there's not an emotion behind it yet. Until you see like a kid that's trapped in like a trash pile or something like that, you know, it's just a abstract problem. You know, it's you know, you are describing it, so it's not a news story, but it will, without a character in it, it will have the same emotional connection as a news story. You know, like, oh, there's the really dirty river in such and such place, and you know, so that's something to consider, is to say, okay, how do I start making this personal as soon as I can? Otherwise, your prose will start to come off purple, because it will just be language for its own sake, which is very beautiful language for its own sake. But then I want to start seeing it driving towards a goal, driving towards a story and a chain of events. The prose is starting to sound purple without a purpose that I can see for its florid, for its colorful language. I want to start. Purple means kind of overly poetic, sometimes like a little too colorful. It's kind of like where that's where it totally fine. It means like purple prose means prose that's too colorful, and it's distracting from the action of the story. So sometimes it's good to have kind of colorful prose, but I'm thinking that here you have an apparent strength with language, and I think that maybe you're leaning on that strength with language a little too much, where it's starting, like, the language you're using is distracting me, and I'm having a tougher time seeing what's going on, at least for the first little bit. Okay. We get paid by the word back in the day, like Dickens. I think that's also one of its sources. So I don't think it's always a bad thing, and it sounds like you're doing it with a purpose, but it will come at a risk, right? Like, you're going to lose. It's all about, hey, what are the risks you're willing to take? And this purple prose will start pulling people out of the story. It'll make it harder to connect with it, right? Because they're just reading the language and trying to say, okay, what does this mean? Okay, it's really dark, or, you know, or whatever. So that's one of the risks, is whenever you use more florid language, it brings the reader a little further back. So encouragement is when you do want to kind of open up with language, make sure that you have a really gosh darn good reason to do it, and then it will drive one of your story goals forward. It'll make a character easier to understand. It'll make a chain of events easier to understand. It'll make a city easier to visualize. And I think at this point, some of these things are actually making it a little harder to visualize that city because there's so much complex language happening when I just need to know, okay, there's trash, got it. Like, that's kind of where the trade-offs with Purple Pro start to happen. Though, ones that many writers choose to make, depending on your goals for the story. Okay. That's going to be this language in terms of giving me extra meaning that a plain the only light came from glaring blues, yellows, and pinks of the electronic billboards placed anywhere they thought someone might see. Some illusion, the odd window. The only light came from glaring blues and yellows and pinks of electronic billboards placed anywhere they the marketing. The marketing syndicate. I want to be part of a marketing syndicate. Uh-oh. Internet glitch. Internet glitch. Comcast sucks. Comcast sucks, everybody. Sorry about that. I'm back. Get a lot of lag spikes. Somebody... Why is Comcast charging me? I don't know. They don't do jack. Yeah. Some illumination. I'm a marketer. I want to be part of a marketing syndicate. Some illusion came from an odd window. I would wonder, so this is something that might be an opportunity, right? Like where you can say, light from few lone windows reflected off the lake's trash-filled ripples. If you want to make it more poetic, verbal prose. But again, this is an example of some illumination came from the odd window overlooking the river, right? That's telling me there's some illumination, right? So showing me is to say there is a ripple happening, like trying to... Illumination is still abstract, right? This is concrete, right? The only light came from glaring blues, yellow. So we know that the street is kind of cast in these lurid tones. But the odd window, this one is more telling, like, right? So if you have the chance, you might want to translate it into how it's looking in the scene. Always, say, how does it look? How does it touch the senses? Illumination coming from an odd window. Okay, is it, little dots? Are they little dots? Or it could be like, illumination from small windows, from dotted the black faces of the industry of the... I can't spell dormitories. That's another kind of example of saying, okay, how does it translate? How does it translate into what I can see, experience, and it's one of the biggest writer problems I'm perpetually working on. Oh, well, don't worry. It's one of the biggest writer problems every writer is perpetually working on. It's something that we all work on. It's one of those things, too, where there are times you do want to tell. There are times when telling is really efficient. It's very important and very helpful. But there are times when you say, oh, if I can evoke this, make it feel more evocative, then why not? one could go not go a minute with them when walking through the city without the latest news or death counts flashing by their eyes. Okay, the only noise that punctuated the night came from the billboards. Deep, almost inaudible droning that was lost in the darkness, but always resting in the back of your mind. Okay, so this is what I said about the register of language. A personal your is a lower register of language. This should be one's mind, unless you're, consciously changing that. Unless you're constantly like changing the way the narrator's reacting to us, that's okay. But the narrator's register is shifting. Even during the day, when some decide to leave their homes, it can still be felt by the hairs on your neck. Again. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I got your back. Oh, sorry. Didn't want to have caps lock on. Well, that's good. This is kind of all the consistently tweaks that happen. Standing atop the bridge, a man smoked a generic cigarette beside the flickering street light. So again, I kind of lose the object here. The tooth rattling buzz can still be felt. Something like that. This is not exactly the edit I would say, but like I lose what the it is referring to here a little. Standing atop the bridge, a man smoked a generic cigarette. He leaned against the railing, dark eyes watching, wearing an ill-fitting brown hat, old enough to have been worn by his grandfather, and dirty enough to city. We have some verbal repetition here. We have Warren, Warren. So since Warren's already established here, keep the earlier version. We have Warren, War, and War. So whenever you're doing an edit, when you read it aloud, you'll catch stuff like this. This is a doubled word here. Yeah, okay. He wore it anyway. Anyone walking past would, if asked, have said. I think that is a past participle. Would have said is past. Oh gosh, my brain's getting a little melty, but yeah. That there is nothing defining the man save for there was nothing overgrown black beard. Defining, distinctive, maybe. I think you're looking for distinctive about the man save for an overgrown black beard, which could already have been found on those dirty shoes could have been found on any doorstep. So we're getting some verbal doubling. We're hitting the same beat a lot here. Hitting the same beat a lot. He's pretty much like everyone. This can be okay, but right now we don't have much conflict or a character we're kicking off. So, pushing to find the plot drama might help. So what I'm kind of saying here is you're doing, and it happens earlier too, like you're hitting the same beat a few times, right? Like we're getting the city's dirty beat, the city's dirty beat, the city's dirty beat. And then we get this guy, he's kind of edgy, He has a beard, but he's like everybody else. He has a worn overcoat. We're getting so much time on kind of these details, which is great. I mean, they're really well described, but a story hasn't started yet. There hasn't been a question. There hasn't been an unexpected yet, right? Because in this world, dirty and kind of creepy marketing is expected. So trying to get to that unexpected thing, that difference, that spark, will let a reader be much more patient with verbal doubling. There'll be a little bit more there. So thinking of ways, if you can, to say, okay, how can I work the plot in earlier? How can I, this dark, shaggy guy, I kind of assuming he's kind of a sketchy character, but it's good food for thought. It's just an opinion, but I feel it's more about show versus tell instead of show not tell. Yes, I totally agree, Blossom. We actually did a little writing tip video on that in Final Boss. You guys are pitching it for me. I actually should do some more of these because I think I ran out. I already posted them all. Where's my videos? My page? My video? Yeah, there you go. We did a little short show don't tell talk. Enjoy that. But not much in the city is unexpected. That's true. So then you have to find, okay, what's the angle? Is it someone fighting against the inevitability? We and if this is, and this is your goal, right? If this is just going to be kind of like a scenic study, like kind of like a drawing a scene and going about that, that's totally reasonable. Like that can be your goal. And I think one thing you should be thinking though is, what is your goal of the story? Do you want this to kind of have some motion, have this like interest, because so if you do want it to have more motion, yeah, beware of prologues. I would agree. I prefer to start chapter 1 too. I have to avoid prologues very heavily in my writing as well. But yeah, he carried the rusty gun on his hip. So did any others in the city who could afford the risk. Had something to lose. The gun hadn't been fired in years, and yet he reached down every so often, making sure it was still there. Dark fog enveloped the city, but it wasn't much. The man puffed on a cigarette. Okay. Suddenly, the gust of wind blew on the street. The wind snatched the ill-fitting. The man vainly snatched at it, but it quickly fled his reach. The man sighed, then pulled a dirty collar of his overcoat over his neck and watched the hat sail in the darkness. And his fingers found nothing except the empty box. So I mean, that's the thing. We're, maybe it'll come in a second, but so far, oh, I see. You're kind of doing a more character study than here. I see. So you're kind of going to these different moments. I see what you're doing here, going to different moments to give this inevitable sense to the city. This can work, but you're going to have to depend a lot more on language. Unified imagery and a complex take on theme to make a story like this. Okay, this is what I'm gathering so far, is that you're kind of trying to build this scenic thing you have, and so the gears turn, and so the gears turn, and this kind of inevitable machinery of industry, right? And you're building that up, and you're trying to have all these mundane moments in this story, or these kind of like this dark kind of moments of running out, in this story, which works and which can work. But whenever you're going into a story without And okay, let's say we have the man back again, so maybe I'm misreading this. But whenever you're cutting conflict, whenever you're taking a little bit of, whenever you're not having conflict or plot questions so much as your core driver in the story, then everything else has to bear a lot more weight. You know, one great story you should definitely read is The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. You should definitely read that because that's what she did, right? Like in The Ones Who Walk Away, the man is the main character. Okay, okay. So maybe it does. Maybe it's not a set of scenes. That's what I just had thought. This is why I like to kind of just give my impressions as I go and see what people figure out. From the shadows of the alleyway, nearly indistinguishable from the bags of garbage behind them, you used to smell. So then, so far, all that's happened here. So then, all that's happened in this entire section is a dude ran out of cigarettes in a dirty city. So obviously, you know, maybe that's going to precipitate more and stuff like that. But if you are saying, okay, this guy is a protagonist, there's going to be a plot arc, there's going to be change, and it's going to move in a direction, then the beginning is a little slow for that. I would say it's not pacing exactly as I think it needs to, or this section could probably be cut by 20-30%, and you might get advantage out of that. If plot or this man's story is the driver, this first section moves a little too slow. Perhaps trimming it down will fix, or even adding some conflict, but currently pacing feels off. For my tastes, at least. Alright, I might do one more section here, and then I might head to bed. We'll see. Which I think is a good bit. That's nice. Page 6 and change, yeah. The man walked in the shadows of the alleyway, nearly indistinguishable from the bags of garbage piled beside him. He was used to the smell. His hands absentmindedly twisted a signal, waiting. Occasionally yells of protest. Filtered. Oh, filtered. Got you. This man was supposedly supposed to be peaceful. Two groups. The Namdu were humanoid, having 2 arms and 2 legs and dark eyes. It could change entirely based on. Yeah, I mean, okay. All right. So like without conflict, the most like the description will matter more. This protest could carry some drama, but the narrator slash the guy is disinterested, so it doesn't carry emotion. That's one of the challenges. Having a disinterested narrator. Something tells me you're a fan of Vonnegut, so it goes. Yes, and the gears turned. Yes, and so it goes. Such a good book. Very depressing. But this narrator is a little bit disinterested. So this, like, the description, kind of what's going on in the world, that could carry more of the drama, but again, it's kind of pulled back right now, so it's not. I feel like it still feels distant. I don't have that personal like grip, like you kind of even in Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-5. He was, you had that guy. I forget the name of the character. It's been so many years since I've read it. But he was this vulnerable guy who was like in the hospital and just like processing the horrors that he'd seen, and so all that stuff that was described in that very dry narration. So the dry narration worked there because Vonnegut did describe a lot of things dryly, but he contrasted it with the guy who had like had that weird experience, like who had like gone crazy. And that even though it's getting described in such a dry fashion, the emotional impact is catastrophic because it absolutely destroyed that character that experienced all that stuff. Let me know if I'm misquoting Vonnegut or called Slaughterhouse-5 because it's been a long time since I read it. But that's kind of the thing to keep in mind, right? Is that there's always a piece of drama. There's always a piece of drama. Yes, he describes it in a very, cool, cut, dry way, but the drama is look at what happened to this person who's literally lost his mind because of what he's experienced. Even though he's describing it very, very plain, very, very flat description. Oh, yeah, and then this person died. So it goes, you know. But it's always has that yeah. I think I had too much description, a little too much, and too little personal connection. Yeah, and that's the thing, and that's where Vonnegut actually, and that's a good, if you like his stuff, that's a really great place to draw from, is to say, okay, how is he making me care? How is he making me care? And you just, he does a good job of like, you kind of see the results of like what happened to this person. I like this is really cool. I like these. This is a sweet concept. Like how this is set up. Cool biology. They also haven't terror before his life, but no one cared to get in their rights. Warrior culture, they had scared the Terrans upon life. Didn't want to leave their homes for a year, afraid of it might bring some groups newly merged colonies. Terror had never been pure. On top of the surrounding buildings posted the sites of each new square inch, probably flash news super virus sweeps through coastal cities. Oh man. Did you write this during COVID? This seems prophetic. It announced declaring events. Is everything that's in here gonna come to pass? Other man scratched his head, turning back to protest, uninterested. The infrequent shouts of the crowd were closed by deep, unwavering silence. Yeah, another question to ask is the stakes. What's at stake? It's written 6 months before COVID. Wow. What's at stake? What's the outcome that I'm waiting to find out about? And who will suffer from it, and how does it relate to the guy? And there are a lot of books that have, so your viewpoint character, this guy, yeah, he may not be the protagonist. He may not be the person driving the action, but he still has to have stakes in the game. I think one of the best examples of, viewpoint character that's not a protagonist is the Great Gatsby. So I don't know if you want this man to just only be an observer. Also, a great short story that does this is in my Final Boss library. It's called The Grasshopper. That's actually a really good one because it's doing some similar stuff. It's doing an observer story, and I was about to say Nick Carraway. Yeah, that's exactly right. there's a rap song like there were several coronaviruses up until 2013, but it's still so odd he chose that year. Yeah. I love the idea of that narrator, but damn, must be hard to write. Yeah, it's just much more complicated. Like, you're really building two main characters, and in some ways Nick is still one of the most affected people by the story. He observes all this, but the observations disillusion him. Gatsby never was disillusioned. Gatsby was just a force of nature. He just wanted Daisy, and that's all he wanted, and he would do anything to get Daisy. But the person who's changing by observing the unchangeable, unchangeable Gatsby, the person who changes is Nick, and he kind of looks around and he's just getting disillusioned by what he's seeing and the glory and the glitz of the Roaring Twenties, and he finally just gives it up. Very interesting, very very well done. Oh gracious, what was I thinking about? Oh yes, the grasshopper. So the observer type stories, those are a thing. Those are a structure, and it's in the Final Boss library. I'll link it here. I'll put it in the story and in chat just so you guys have it. But I don't love the translation, and that's the one frustrating thing about not reading all the languages. But the translation here is not my favorite, but it was the one that I found for free. Let me see. Copy link. I think this is it. Will this work? Yeah, I think it would be really hard to write. I don't know if this will work. Discord app, yeah. Hopefully that works. And you both are members of the Discord, but you should definitely read that story before you go to bed tomorrow or tonight if you're feeling really, really, really spicy. Some turns look restless. So, where is the man? Yeah. So, yeah. But he's crowd surged. But the observer has to change. Yeah, yeah. The observer has to change, right? Like whenever you're doing an observer story, what is observed has to affect the observer. So there is still that personal connection. You can see it in Great Gatsby, and you can see it in the Grasshopper and the Bell Cricket story that I also shared. That one's a little bit almost much sadder in some, or it's sad in a lot of ways, because the observer kind of comes away with despair a little bit in terms of how blind people are. But still, it's a great story. All right, it's time for a kind bar. Many Terrans and Namdu bashing the back streets. The latest news appeared. So getting my work edited also helps because it gets me used to getting constructive feedback. Yes, and if people are destructive feedback, then don't talk to them. One thought here, and so the gears turn. So I love the idea. I love the phrase. Um, the one thing to think about is how, this is something that you can choose to do or not, I think. But one question is like, can it be something in the world? Why isn't there some I mean, this is a sci-fi world, so you could do something cool by having this massive clock over the city, like, you know, um, so that might be a helpful way of, just trying things out. My cat has joined me. All right. All right, I'm gonna kind of skim this next section and see what happens, but I'm gonna go from there. Day was not like night. Time of cars is past long ago. If you're trying to find a car somewhere, able to walk down the street, billboards flickered and bathed in the rooftops. Um, Before long, the man walked into the small group of Terrans. They were fighting. Soon after, he turned and pulled open a splintered door. Set a bill of green wood. 2 great boxes. Past another alley, enters. He glanced over, so he's doing some sort of delivery. Dark blooded, seeking the stone. Like that you're using smell, even though it's kind of grim. I like that you're using smell. Good to have all senses here. I'm gonna swipe that. Yeah, please do. The tall man walked a few more strides down the alley, then swooped and retrieved things made in paws, ball caps, speckled holes. Man kept walking. Okay, so he's made some sort of sketchy delivery here, which I think is cool. The one thing that I will say is you're running the risk. This is a somewhat active scene, but only in the fact that our character is going somewhere new to give us, very well rendered exposition about a new aspect of the city. But exposition needs conflict to become drama. So I think that's something I would think about. Typing the cat is like challenge mode. Yeah, I know. She's crawling around trying to chew on things. Yes. She's like, can I chew on your fingers, please? They are delicious human fingers, and they are tasty. But one thing I will say is, so far, at least up to this point, maybe it changes, but so many of these sections have been about talking about an aspect of the city, which means they are exposition sections. They're talking about something that is. And I think one thing to think about is how do we talk about something that's moving and make that exposition personal? How do we make the reader want to know all these things about this dark city? Um, and maybe it's a kid, maybe the man is a child, and it's just a kid navigating this nightmare world, and how, we need to get to know the man and their perspectives, because something needs to change, right? Like, the man is going to go through the same journey as the reader, right? And it could be something that has a dark ending, like it could be a changes a little, but it could be like a Javert ending where this is this man's last day on this earth, and maybe he's saying goodbye to all the things that he liked, but they've all rotted over in some way in this new society. And then in the end, if it's a sad ending like Javert, he falls into the river and commits suicide. Or, if it's a happy ending, maybe he says, you know what, this world is ruined, but I'm, and all the things that I loved have caked over, but I'm gonna try to make a difference still. Um, so those would be the things. I think that's my probably my biggest note is really we need to. Yeah, he definitely dies at the end. Okay, so then yeah, like make me feel that progress. Make me feel that progress a little bit. And the choice. I want there to be some sort of choice that he makes about this world, right? Because we're getting set up against the man against the world, the man against the world, the man against the world. This is what's getting set up here, and we really need to see him making some choices where it's a tug of war, where he does something and the world changes, and the world does something and he changes, and he does something and the world changes, and the world does something and he changes. So we need that to be two-way. Right now they're two, which is very beautifully written, but two parallel streets. They're both happening independent of each other. I really want to see those things become interrelated. How does that protest affect him, or how does he maybe affect the protest? So I'm going to write my notes down here at the bottom. Um, wanted to see, this story is very much a man versus, world, society. I want to see the individual and society have a tug of war. The man should try to change society, and it pushes back, and society tries to change him, and he pushes back. Consequences, both sides. The writing is really clean and well evoked. I'm usually always clear what's going on, which is great. Love the Yeah, it sounds good. Considering I spent a night writing and another night editing, it turned out half decent. Absolutely, I think this is a really, really strong start. I'm just gonna read over my notes just because I typed them fast. The writing, yeah, really, really clean. I think the grammar, the paragraphy is really strong, so that's like a great win. The description, the city is awesome. I like the the image of inevitability and the grinding gears that you set up. But again, um, you're doing it on the macro scale with this story, and you want to really look for opportunities to do it both at the macro scale, how the city is affecting society, how society is affecting the individual in a general sense, but then you also want to make sure that it's really, really clear how society is affecting the individual in a specific sense, which in this case is our viewpoint character, the man. But yeah, also I want to see that tug of war a little bit more in both of those levels. How is a society pushing these people? How are these people pushing back? How are individuals standing up and either improving or degrading society further and making it more oppressive? Also, yeah, some of the description can get pared back a little bit, which will hopefully help you get some extra space to focus on that story. Um, Yeah, and the last thing I think is the dispassionate viewpoint character. The man, he's not named, which makes it, like makes it harder for us to connect to him. Which I know is intentional. Like this is nameless, right? Like no one here has a name in this machine city. You're just a cog. You're not a name. You're just a man. You're just a Terran. Doesn't matter. That is totally fine, but you just have to know that for us to care, you're going to have to work harder. There is really power in names. So when you do remove a name from a character, you're just going to have to work a little harder to make us see the humanity in them a little bit, or the absence of that humanity, and make us feel it in a way that evokes us, our humanity, to cry out and be like, oh, that's horrible. That's horrible that this person's humanity has been so changed. Um, But yeah, I also want to get a sense of his impressions, right? Because, one silly kind of interpretation is, well, what if this is way better than before and the man is loving life? What if, the rivers were covered in trash and now they're just kind of have some trash floating on it and there's been great progress and things are way better and maybe the man is loving life, maybe he says, you know what, this is way better than living in the trash palace. Now we only have trash in the streets, you know. Like, and that's one of the things where I'm suggesting getting some interior thought from the man, getting some of his opinions. What are his opinions on everything? Um, yeah, opinions. Your viewpoint character's opinions matters a lot. It really helps the reader understand how they should relate to what they're seeing, right? So like just showing us stuff without comment is good, and I think through my understanding I could get a sense of the narrator's opinions. But I do think that this main character, who is still separate in some ways from the narrator, I need to get a sense of what he feels about these things. If he's happy about it, if he's sad about it, if he thinks it's great or if it's bad. Oh, if no one has a name, how will you go about addressing the problem of knowing multiple characters? Would it be something Homeric like the Green-Eyed Man and the Short Man, or I don't know those? Yeah, I mean, I think there are some novels that try to do that. I think in this case, uh, um, I think in this case, Bindus is, I think he's referring to some other people as like this person's leader or whatever. And I do it in some of my novels where I have like, I title things like this is one of, I give these two unnamed characters like the viewpoint character will name them something. Like in my last novel, the viewpoint character, yeah, the viewpoint character confronted this unnamed character, and then he was like, well, he's old, so I'm just going to call him the old man. And so he just always called him the old man, the old man. And so that was like an easy thing. So like giving them sort of like, depending on your goals, like, Bindus is using the man, right? And one of my novels uses the old man as kind of to reference this unnamed character. Yeah, it's never, like I said, it's never smooth. It's never like seamless. It's always a bit of a headache, and it sometimes doesn't come across very smoothly. So, food for thought. Um, but it's usually fun. Like it's fun to do, but it's harder. I almost yeah. I generally discourage unnamed characters, but in this story, like it's serving a purpose, right? Like this is another nameless statistic in this massive city. That's what this guy is, just another statistic. So it's one of those things where you just have to make those trade-offs. Like, do I want to make this point that this person's not a statistic, or I want to make it a little bit easier of a read for my readers? It's just a choice you're going to have to make, and hopefully if you have beta readers or friends that'll read your stuff and kind of say, hey, I was confused here, or I liked this, or I didn't like that, that's pretty helpful. Anyways, guys, it's 1:30 over here. I am pretty pooped. But this was awesome. I really, really enjoyed your story. I think you did such a great job, Bindus. Joe Sarmaggio loves to have unnamed characters, and it can be so confusing. If you truly have only 3 characters, I think you should get away with it. Yeah, I agree. Off you go, Cat. But yeah, I think this is a really, really great foundation, and I hope you keep working on this. I think this is an awesome story. But yeah, read those stories that I shared. I think that might be might give you some helpful inspiration. And good luck in your revisions. And great job to both the writers tonight. I always want to say that. Great, 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 great job. It takes a lot of guts. It takes a whole lot of guts to write something. It takes even more guts to share it with somebody. And yeah, like I think there's so much good in both of the stories that I read tonight. And yeah, you can read my writing streams, which is why I do writing streams. You can look at my writing and know that I too, just like everybody else, have, a lot of things that we all can keep tweaking and keep tuning and keep improving on. So I hope this helps you on that journey of just making your stories better and better, both Cyber and B1ndas, and great job. You guys did really, really well. These were solid stories, and I'm excited to see the revisions and what you all come up with next in your revision journey. Take care, everybody.